guys, to another episode of the Wayne Podcast. We're here. It's preview time. Joshua versus Usyk. First off, let's get the customary. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thank you, man. We're about to see a real fighting champion in name and nature.
With what 25 seconds is that he's hitting shots already.
A real fighting champion in name and nature, right? How are you keeping anyway?
I'm good, man. Look, I've never been more excited. I mean, I have been more excited for certain other fights, but there's just that buzz. I think Joshua brings it. Heavyweight boxing in Britain. There's just something about it. Man. Full packed stadium. It's just perfect. Like, this is what boxing events are made for. So let's just do it. Let's get into it. Joshua Usyk. So a little preview. I'm gonna ask you first in terms of like Usyk. I've seen some people actually say that he can win the fight, and because he's a better boxer, he's a bit more slicker. And I'm gonna say this from my side of things. I feel like that's very disrespectful to Joshua, and the reason I say that is a lot of people will look at Joshua as this knockout guy from a casual perspective, and I can, because that's what you grew up seeing Joshua. From his loss to Ruiz. And even a bit beforehand, you can see him slowly understanding that these fights, you can't go in and knock someone out. You've got to play the patient game, and that's good. And I feel like he was looked down on for doing that a little bit by a few casuals. So I think, as well as Usyk is this slick fighter, he's the guy that's come up from a previous weight class more recently.
Yeah,
I don't see Usyk, for me, getting close to beating Joshua. Even if it went to the cards, I still personally believe we'd see a unanimous decision. Am I a bit silly in thinking this?
No, I think you're right. I think you stole the words from my mouth. Joshua is damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. Because when he just knocks people out, everyone's just like, oh yeah, but that's all you can do, this, that, and a third. And then when, for example, in his last fight where he went for the knockout, but he didn't chase it too much.
Yeah.
So he decided to box Pulev for a bit. And then he's lost it. And I'm just like, what do you want from him? Do you want him to be a better boxer or not? Because some of you all you rubbish the fact that he wants to become a better boxer. But then the moment he tries to show that skill, then it's like, see, he hasn't got that sting in his fist no more to do certain things. And it's ridiculous. So I feel like you're right that people are underestimating Joshua's skill because for a long time it was just become a knockout artist. But I think the Ruiz loss was the best thing to happen to him. He's brought in new trainers. And you got to think, especially at this part of his career, to bring in new trainers as well that can rejuvenate him. Not a lot of fighters are going to humble themselves like that and then go through that rite of passage. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this new Anthony Joshua looks like, especially I'm sure he's relishing the chance of going up against Usyk and just showing people, yes, you think this guy's a slick boxer, but what people need to realize as well, sometimes just because someone's a slick boxer, it takes someone fighting your game for you to show that. Sometimes you don't need to be the better outright technical boxer. You just have to implement your game plan better. And I think that's what we're going to see from Anthony Joshua. He's going to show a higher skill set, but then he's also just going to mix up what he does best and not try to play into Usyk's game too much. There's no point trying to outskill someone as slick as a boxer as Usyk is. Go in there, show a higher IQ, but then sometimes just turn into that puncher you are and knock him out.
And on Usyk being in the heavyweight division, based on his couple of fights he has, what have you made of him? Do you think it's been a smooth transition to the heavyweight division, or do you think there's learning steps that he still needs to maneuver?
I think it was never going to be smooth as people predicted. It was always going to be ugly, and I think it goes back to what I've said prior in that people don't appreciate what it takes sometimes at the highest levels to transition to a lower weight class or higher one. It's not always going to be like the Manny Pacquiao's of the world where you just go up a division and you just start knocking out everyone. It's not always like that. Sometimes you have to find your feet. So I know people use the example against Chisora, but sometimes you have to have those ugly fights. It's going to happen the same way with Anthony Joshua. When he matured and faced Ruiz again, it wasn't a pre-season of fights. But what Anthony Joshua showed is like, no, I'm a mature fighter now. Why am I going to go in there and constantly trying to knock out someone who's shown that they've got a fantastic chin? Go in there and outbox them. Go in there, use that jab, show the new skill you have. And I feel like with Usyk, it's like, yeah, he has to get used to fighting heavyweights now. He can't just like mash up guys like he used to do in cruiserweight. So the Derek Chisora fight, he found his feet in the end. It was ugly, but guess what? People also need to give credit to Chisora. Even though you might not see him as the world beater, he's still a rugged guy he's still a rugged gatekeeper, if you will. You can't discount him. So what Usyk showed was that he can hang in there, but now this is the big shot to show, can you fly? You've shown that you can crawl, you can walk, can you fly now? And guess what? Anthony Joshua's flowing with the best of them. Like I said, a real fighting man in name and nature.
So let's play that thing. Let's say he does fly. Let's say he wins.
Mm-hmm.
Joshua then has 2 losses on his record. Now, it's a bit different to like how we've spoken previously about Tyson Fury, where we've said if Fury loses based on Fury's persona, the way he acts and stuff, you can see a possible in-ring retirement legitimately then after the bell. What do you think would happen with Joshua? Because we've literally just said he gets critics when he tries to box. He has critics when he doesn't go for a knockout. Imagine the critics after losing to someone who's only had a couple of fights at heavyweight. Where I know the possibility is there, but a lot of people aren't thinking it because we're all looking ahead to Fury versus Joshua.
Of course.
If he loses, what happens with the drawing board? Like, where can you possibly go from here?
I don't think it's as bad as I think. We need to start changing the culture in boxing to like how MMA is. MMA, do you know how many champions there are out there that's had multiple losses, and when they become champion, they still get celebrated? There's an old school fighter called Robbie Lawler. I remember when he had a late resurgence in his career, I think he had over 10 defeats by the time he became champion. And he was celebrated regardless because people understood, like, listen, losses are going to happen. And I feel like we need to change this culture of thinking that one loss is going to ruin you. And as much as these two clash heads, AJ and Lennox Lewis are very parallel in the fact that I think they're very competitive. So a loss ain't going to be too much a detriment to their morals. I think AJ showed that with the Ruiz fight. There's a lot of rumors that, this happened backstage and that happened. And I'm sure they did happen, but AJ just said, listen, Ruiz won, next fight, I'm coming back. That's the heart of a competitor. That is the heart of a champion. And the same way I've seen Lennox Lewis talk about his 2 losses, he was just like, in the middle of the ring, he knew what went wrong. And he just said, get me to the drawing board. Let's get back into camp. And I want to get my belts back. And I think that's the same. AJ comes from that set. He's cut from that same cloth. He's just gonna. If he does take a loss, fine. I'll take a loss. Usyk will run it back, and regardless, AJ's gonna get. I keep on saying it. AJ will get that undisputed by fire or by force.
I think before we touch on the undercard, I think I've got a bit of a different opinion to you to that. I can appreciate I can understand another loss.
Yeah.
But I think in the current boxing era that we're in, I think with how people describe, you don't have a Tyson, you don't have an Ollie, you don't have you don't have as many big quality names in boxing, and a lot of people are ducking and diving. They're not fighting the best of the best. So for him to, in this particular heavyweight realm, anyway, it's always been Fury and Joshua, the 3. For him to have 2 losses and neither of them be Fury or Wilder, I think that would look bad on him. As for like your Robbie Lawler point, I can appreciate that it's just more from that journeyman perspective. I think Joshua's been promoted, the way Joshua's been looked at, it looks like this guy's meant to be invincible. And for him, like I said, to have 2 losses with any of them 2 not being there, I would look at it from my point, and I also look at the social media world we live in. And a lot of people will not take him as the guy, even if he goes back and becomes undisputed champion. Especially if he's undisputed champion where he didn't have to go through either of them 2.
Well, what I'll say to that, though, is this. Lennox Lewis, when he had those 2 losses, like I said, it's very parallel. They weren't the world beaters. They weren't the Tysons. They wasn't the Evander Holyfield at the time. Lennox Lewis took 2 losses to people that he wasn't expected to, and he still came back as undisputed, the last undisputed, in fact. And he not only beat people from his previous generation, he beat the people of his generation, and then he beat Klitschko of the future generation, and then he called it career. For me, that's one of the most underrated legends of the sport. But I digress. With Anthony Joshua, people can say what they want, but then Anthony Joshua can just say, who are the opponents that, outside of Fury and Wilder fighting each other, who have they fought? Who have they fought that could even pose a threat to them? Don't get me wrong, I'll give Tyson Fury his credit for beating Klitschko, but you can't keep on talking about a victory that happened over 5 years ago. Other than Klitschko, who else has he fought? Do you get what I'm saying? And you even mentioned about that cut against Otto Wallin. If there was any other fighter, that fight would have got called off and Fury would have lost. So if AJ loses to Usyk, who is an actual proven champion, even if it's in the cruiserweight division, that's not a bad eyesore for him. So, and like I said, AJ is, you was talking about the whole, we don't have an Ali, some people say we don't have an Ali, we don't have a Tyson. I think it's just American commercialization, because we have an AJ, and I think people just don't give him his credit, especially a lot of the boxing media is in the States. They don't give AJ his credit because he's not one of them. That is the truth. Let's be honest about it. That is the truth.
I can't even disagree with that. When I watch, aside from, I will say this, the one I look at is probably Max Kellerman.
Yeah.
I think because he, I would say, specializes directly in boxing as well as knowledge about everything, and he does. But no, you're not wrong. I think a lot of people still see Deontay Wilder as the guy. If you were to ask them, they'd be like, no, the fight that everybody wants to see is Wilder versus Fury. That's the fight.
Which is wild, because the Americans don't even back Wilder like they should back Wilder, but they won't give credit to AJ. Do you know how crazy that is? What? Because he's not one of you. Like, for years, we've had to appreciate fighters from overseas, and we've had no issue with that. But then now, when it's the UK's turn to appreciate our own, and our own is actually doing big things, then it's like, oh, well, he's not doing it over here. Who told? I get it. America, you've had the stranglehold on the heavyweight division for a long time, but it's called a world heavyweight champion. So there's a possibility that somebody outside of the US could be a world champion. Like, is crazy, but we already know the truth anyway. The guy holds the IBF, the IBO, the WBO, and the WBA champion, and his name is not Wilder or Fury, it's Anthony Joshua. So put some respect on his name.
I'll take that. And sticking on boxing in the UK, the undercard, for example.
Yeah.
You have Lawrence Okolie, Campbell Hatton, Callum Smith. Just quickly, I want to touch on each, guys. I will say this, I'm not too huge on British boxing. The one thing I'll say is management of Okolie, for me, sensational.
Brilliant.
Really, really enjoyed him being with Joshua, the whole understudy type thing. I think it worked perfectly. This fight that he's got now, for me, I think, based on what I've seen of him, he should win this fight.
Yeah.
And it's just another notch to upgrade his career, his record. Sure. Is that the same thing you're thinking of?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is just a case of, it's a big homecoming in front of a crowd. Obviously, when he won the Cruiserweight Championship, he wasn't able to have it in front of a full crowd, let alone a stadium. And I think this is going to be the show-out moment for Lawrence Okolie, especially before Anthony Joshua fight card. It's like, imagine everyone's waiting for Joshua, but that's the truth. A lot of people are just going to be waiting for Joshua. So then some people might be like, normally some people just tune in for the main event, but they might be like, oh, do you know what? Let me just see the fight just before the main event. If Lawrence Okolie can put a stamp in this fight and then also make a call out for the other cruiserweight title, man, you couldn't ask for much more. Especially with all eyes on you, that is a big moment for him to just be like, people are going to be tuned in. Obviously, they're going to talk about AJ and Usyk, but then they're going to be like, oh, did you see that Lawrence Okolie before that? Oh man, I need to see his fights after that. I want to see him become undisputed. The same way a lot of people say the cruiserweight division isn't the sexiest division, but listen, man, I was a young teen when I saw David Haye absolutely take the UK by storm becoming undisputed cruiserweight champion. So I think Lawrence Okolie can be of that same ilk, and the way that they're managing him, man, God bless him. I hope he does it. He's also giving away in a shout out, so shout out back to Lawrence Okolie.
And let's quickly just talk on Callum Smith. Obviously lost to Canelo.
Yeah.
Are we now looking at him just bringing his career back and just getting back into the position where he was before and contending for titles and stuff?
Yeah, now that he's at a light heavyweight, I think the main thing for me is to see what he does with his frame, because when he was fighting against Canelo, it's like, why are you letting the short guy get that close to you? Obviously, you got to give appreciation to that's how good Canelo is, but at the same time, I think people did have a lot of criticism with Callum Smith, is that you've got this big frame, and we've seen a lot of the time when some people don't fight to their frame, they just want to get into slugfest, even though you're built with a range. Like, do not let someone get close to you when you're built like that. Simple as, there's no need for you to engage in fighting when you're that rangy. So it'll be, people want to see the reinvention of Callum Smith because he's a likable character. So I'll be interested to see how he looks. Hopefully he gets to showcase his new skills. Hopefully he might have had a big cut to try and make super middleweight. So hopefully find at light heavyweight, he gets to rejuvenate himself. And listen, the British scene has a lot of great light heavyweights, so we might have to add Callum Smith to that, because there's already Boatsi, there's Craig Richards, there's Lyndon Arthur, there's Anthony Yard, there's Callum Smith, and then Callum Smith. Someone's name has left me, and I feel so bad.
Because this is your division, bro.
I know. It will come to me. It will come to me. I apologize. Dan Aziz as well is another one. There's Ben Johnson. That's Johnson. So Callum Johnson. Sorry, apologies to Johnson. Johnson, another one. So, Callum Smith added that to the mix. It could be a great recipe for the UK British division. I wish they would do like a Super 6 like they did back in the day for the British UK fighters. One, to get them paid, also to get their visibility up, and two, to also get them in contention for title fights. So shout out the UK light heavyweight division.
And finally, before we wrap this little preview, obviously we've talked about names and getting yourself out there quickly. Campbell Hatton again. The way I look at it, it's a bit like Tommy Fury in some ways. Like, it's expected to be on any British card that's available to you, and it's not gonna draw in big names, obviously.
Yeah.
But having the Hatton name, it's their visibility. Are we just looking at it from that point of view? Like, there's nothing more, I personally think.
I feel like they should have built him more the same way that they did with Conor Benn. He was the son of, British legend Nigel Benn, but he was still doing his fights in like the York halls of the world. I've even gone to see Conor Benn at York Hall. I remember some of his fights at York Hall. And I feel like with Campbell Hatton, I get it that he got a big name, but you don't always want to skip that process, because sometimes you need those wins in them gritty arenas just to and it's just UK boxing heritage to go to York Hall as well. Yeah. Sometimes you need that. And I get it. It's kind of like a catch-22, because with the Hatton name, you're always going to have eyes. But I just don't want it to be a situation with Campbell Hatton where it's too much too soon, or people start resenting him because they feel like he doesn't deserve the spots he's getting. But listen, man, I can't hate on the young'un, man. More power to him. Go out there, develop into the best fighter that you can be. And I don't expect too much from that fight. All I want to see is just improvement. And that's it. That's all you can ask for.
And with that, that's our preview wrapped up. Obviously, with us talking about our views, we now need to hear all your views as well. So if you are enjoying the content, all you really need to do is go to our YouTube page, like, share, subscribe, drop a comment for all our views. If you agree with us, if you disagree with us, why, just let us know. Follow us on our socials, _with_the_way_, on Twitter and Instagram. Other than that, there's nothing much more I can say. Ray, I know obviously this is a big fight for you.
Of course.
You'll see what happens. We've got the weigh-in coming up on Friday, the big ones on Saturday. If anybody's got tickets as well, that's another thing. If anybody's got tickets, just take a picture, send it in to us, and just let us know how you got tickets.
Yeah, exactly. Hashtag weighed in, man. Even if you're you might be at your house with your boys your girls. Because listen, I'm sure everyone's going to be tuning in. So whether you're with your boys, with your girls, with your group, just, hashtag stay weighed in. Let us know how you watch the fight and give us your opinion.
Yeah. With that, bro, I appreciate you again for coming on. We've done
Love
another
as always,
videos,
people.
and love and peace.
Take care.